I know that you wrote Love Dad during those 2 weeks, that this first draft, and I know that that was not what you were planning to do on your way there. I know that story, but I think that story is fantastic, and I was wondering if you'd share that story with our listeners.
Sure. So yeah, about in about December 2000 or maybe October 2020, uh, just before that, I'd applied for the Varuna Fellowships at various writing residencies, and I'm lucky enough to have gotten one. And the book I happened to get it for, it's called the Henry Handel Richardson Flagship Fellowship, was for my short story collection. It was all well and good, except that I'd been through hell with that book up to that point anyway. So my publisher had closed down, the publisher of my first book had closed down, and then COVID hit 2 weeks after I submitted my book everywhere, and I never got responses for any of those because of COVID. So for someone to say, yes, we want you to go to the Blue Mountains and work on this book that's had the most indifferent response to anything in the world, just seemed like the worst idea ever. Anyway, I was catching up with friends before I went, and one of my friends, she said to me, "There's one story in your collection. It's called The Present," and she said, "That's really amazing. Like it feels like it's really vital, and it's about a dad and two young kids." And she said, "Maybe you could write more of that." And I was like, "Well, yeah, nice try. Like, no, it's not going to happen." And then I wrote two articles for Place Where I Work Center for Stories, and they were both about being a dad, but they were non-fiction. They're very short pieces. And again, I didn't really think much of it. It was just a publication deadline and everything else. And then when I got on the plane from Perth to Varuna, it was the first time I'd been away from my boys in really 8 years aside from one trip. And suddenly I just started writing about being a dad, and little bits and bobs were coming through. And I thought, oh, this is strange, it's really coming out of me. And then when I got on the train from Sydney to Varuna, I was riding away with my headphones on, and this guy gets on, and he's in his mid 20s. He's got blonde hair, beanie, and a little goatee, and he just smiles at me with unconditional love, like immediately. And I'm like, oh, I don't know about this guy at all. Like, I really, something's very suspect about this guy. And then this quiet voice inside my head goes, well, it gets worse because you're going to talk to him and you're going to find out what's going on with him and you're going to tell him how you're going and what's struggling. And I was like, no way, I don't want to do that. And the voice is like, no, you're going to do it. So I did, and I said to him, hey, I'm going to Varuna. I don't know, I'm meant to be writing this book, but I'm not really feeling it. And he smiled again and he said, oh, that's great. And I said, well, how can that be great? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And he said, well, you'll just be the mountain and you'll just be the darkness and you'll be the skies and the clouds and the water running through and your fingers on the keyboard. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty intense, man. And then we talked some more, and I said to him, so where do you even live? And he said, I put my tent up wherever I want in the Blue Mountains and I sleep there. And then I get up, pack my tent up, and I find another place. And I said, but that's mad. And he's like, no, that's the darkness. He said, the darkness is the most beautiful thing in the world. It's like when everything's dark. And I'm going, am I in the right life? Like, have I have I gone into the Matrix or something? So then I said to him, where are you getting off then? And he smiled and he said, I don't know. And then I said, okay. I said, well, I'm getting off at Katoomba. And when we got to Katoomba, I said, are you getting off here? And he looked up and he smiled again and he said, yeah. And I went, okay. And so he got off, and as we were walking off the train station, I said, can you tell me which way I need to go to get out of this train station to get to Katoomba? And he like grinned and he goes, when we get there, you'll know. And I was like, well, we're just about there. Like, we're on the train station. And then when we did get there, he put his arms out and he smiled at me again. And I said, what the are you doing? Like, what is this? And he said, I'm stopping you from going the wrong way. So at that point, I went, there's some weird stuff going on here, and I don't know what it is or how to make sense of any of it. And I thought, well, you've gotten away from the guy on the train. So that's a start. You can get to Varuna and you can just sit down and write sensibly. And then when I got to Varuna, firstly, Carol, the consultant, she just wasn't there at my appointment. And I was sitting in that main room going, where's Carol? like she's not here. This is weird. So I started writing again, and I sent her an email. I was like, Carol, are we meant to be meeting up? And she's like, I'm not coming yet. And I'm like, oh, this is so strange. She's like, I'll come at like 11 or 12 or something. And I was like, okay. So I started writing some more on the book. And then when she comes, I tell her the same thing I tell Alex on the train. I say, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm meant to be here to write this short story collection. I got a fellowship to do it. And she's like, well, what's really going on? And I said, well, look, I want to write this memoir about being a dad. And she's Canadian. And she just looked at me, and the same Alex smile came on her as well. And she went, do it. I said, what? She goes, do it now. And I said, what are you talking about? And she, oh, you can't do that, can you? And she's like, you can do anything you want. And then she says, in fact, I don't want to see you again in these 2 weeks. Go to your room and like write. So suddenly I had this freedom that I had to do this project, and not me pushing myself around, but just a bunch of encouragement and like genuine joy from other people that this was going to be awesome. And yeah, it was awesome. And so I set myself up because she said, I want you to do it and get it done within the 2 weeks. I did a quick calculation on word count that I'd have to hit every single day without fail. And I think it was 6,750 a day. So I made sure I hit those every day, what come what may. And somehow I still caught up with people at night time every time, but
You
I just
did.
worked
Yeah, you were
hard.
always there.
I was always there at night, but basically it would mean that I had brekkie, went for a walk for like an hour around the Blue Mountains, came back, put on this one Genesis album that I listened to the whole time, and wrote to that, sitting, standing, sitting, standing at the sitting, standing desk, and watched comedy at lunchtime. And other than that, I was working. I didn't read anything during the time because I was ready to just write it all. And the deal was I couldn't edit as I was going. I just had to just get it out first. And it was really liberating and fun. And there was no thought to publication or market or anything, which is weird because surely that would come up, but it just didn't at all. In fact, I thought I was going to die, like on the last day at Verona, because it just seemed too good. Like it just seemed too good that everything was working. I was like, well, something's going to blow up. Like Tuba's going to get meteors coming down or something. Like this just can't be this good for this long. And then Greater City Shadows, the book that Varuna wouldn't let get written yet, comes out in February 2024.
That
So
is so
that's
exciting.
pretty
I did not know
that's
that.
pretty
Laura,
Star
you are
Wars.
like the
Yeah,
scoop
yeah. So I got
keeper.
another book coming in February. I know, it's pretty
What?
insane, right? So for some reason, once I wrote Love Dad, I could go back to Greater City Shadows, and it suddenly made sense, and I knew what I wanted to do with it.